famoso director de cine norteamericano Oliver Stone ha sido ganador de 3 Óscares, uno por su libreto para la película Midnight Express y los otros 2 los obtuvo por la dirección de sus 2 películas, Platoon y Born on the 4th of July. Y aunque con su última película, JFK, no obtuvo ninguno, es la película que más dio que hablar desde antes de salir a los teatros y la que más controversia ha causado por su tema de la conspiración en el asesinato del presidente John F. Kennedy. Con nosotros está Oliver Stone. Mr. Stone, we all, I believe, remember where we were when the assassination of President Kennedy happened. Where were you?
I was a high school student. I was 17 years old, and I was in a boarding school in Pennsylvania, senior year, and not doing nothing special like everyone else in America. A friend of mine came to the door, like in the movie, and told me this terrible news, and I was very sad that whole weekend. We were stunned. I bought the official story. I didn't think about it beyond Oswald. I didn't think there would be anybody else, and I accepted it. I was only 17 years old. The entire country was consumed with the images of the funeral. And then we had Vietnam, we had Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy were killed right after that. Things moved very fast in America in the 1960s, so I don't think we really thought about the implications of John Kennedy's murder. I didn't until the 1980s.
Why does this drama wound so deeply the American consciousness?
Well, I think it's the watershed event of the late 20th century. I think that after Kennedy's death, subconsciously, Americans knew that they could not trust their government anymore, that there was a loss of centrality, a loss of belief. In some way, the subconscious knew that the government was involved in at least the cover-up, if not the conspiracy to kill him. And it was never the same after that. We went to Vietnam quickly. Within 15 months, we had combat troops in Vietnam. We had the killing of Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King. We had Watergate. We had Nixon, conspiracy with Nixon. We had a conspiracy to bomb Laos and Cambodia. We had conspiracies in all through Vietnam to hide the truth from the people. We had more conspiracies with Iran, with Nicaragua twice, with the mining in the ports of Nicaragua. We had a conspiracy with Iraq. We may have had a conspiracy to maintain the hostages in Iran. So much has happened that the American people have truly lost faith, in my opinion, in their government.
You were just talking about Robert F. Kennedy's assassination as well. Why didn't he do something about the conspiracy while being Attorney General?
It was impossible because he was shocked at that time. He was stunned. He lost his brother. He was very close to his brother. He was in no position to do anything for a period of time. But Mr. Johnson, the new president, Lyndon Johnson, appointed the Warren Commission a week later. That all the investigation, the so-called homicide investigation, was run through the Warren Commission, not through the Attorney General's office. So basically, Lyndon Johnson, who hated Bobby Kennedy, hated him, cut off his cojones, as they say, cut off his power. And also bear in mind that Robert Kennedy knew that there was a lot of dirt on John Kennedy and himself. That J. Edgar Hoover of the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, had a lot of dirt on both brothers, with Castro, with the mistresses, with the mafia. So Robert Kennedy, in a sense, at that point in time, did not want the whole investigation to come out into the open. It would shock the American public. Years later, we found out about that stuff. But it's interesting to know that before he died, 2 weeks before he died, Robert Kennedy said to a college student in California, if you were president, and it looked like he was going to be president at that point, would you reopen the investigation on your murders of your brother's death? And he said, yes, he would. And he told Arthur Schlesinger in 1966, I think, 7, that the investigation, the Warren Commission investigation, was a fraud.
He was, in a way, aware of it.
He knew, he was aware, but he could not speak.
What do the two brothers mean to you?
Well, I think that they were one of the great hopes of America. They were like the Gracchi brothers were in Rome. They were reformists. They were rich boys that were sort of turned on their class, as is often the case politically, historically, that people from a certain class are the only ones that are able to reform their government. They had nothing to lose. They knew the essential corruption in America. They knew the mafia. They knew the labor unions. They knew the problems of government, and they wanted to really change the establishment. They wanted to rock the boat, as we say in America. It is my belief that John Kennedy would have ended the Cold War in the second term. He would have been an early Gorbachev, that he was moving towards détente with Khrushchev of Russia on Cuba. They ended the crisis of 1962, which was almost a nuclear war. He made a deal with Khrushchev. He was beginning a backdoor negotiation, no question about it, with Fidel Castro of Cuba to end the Cuba problem. He had a strict no-combat troop policy in Vietnam and Laos, not to send combat troops, and he never did. He never did, and Lyndon Johnson reversed that and escalated the combat troops in Vietnam. So I think the Kennedy brothers were really progressive, progressive and reformers, and would have really changed this country. Already we're starting to, but would have changed it a lot in the late 1960s. And I think the fear of John Kennedy was not just for his second term election, 64 to 68, but the fear was that Robert Kennedy would be president in 68 to 72, 76. And then there was the other brother, that Teddy Kennedy. There was a tremendous fear of a family dynasty changing the establishment policies in America.
Do you think there are more Kennedys to come? There's such a large family.
No, I think the family's back was broken. I don't mythologize the Kennedys. John Kennedy had a lot of problems. He was a womanizer. He was involved with the mafia. You know, there's a lot of negatives you can paint to. But he was a flawed man, but he had the capacity as a young man and as a bright man to change. And he always, America still continues to symbolize hope, and he symbolizes change. And people still like John Kennedy. My movie has been successful all over the world. And it's because people still like him in their hearts, more than any other American president. The 5 presidents that followed John Kennedy, in my opinion, were all increasingly conservative people, because they've enforced, as clerks would, the policies of the establishment in America. They have not risked or shaken up the boat. And there's a reason for this. There's a reason for the ideological continuation of attacking John Kennedy. Destroy him and you destroy liberalism. And that's the message that they've been giving in America, in my country, in the press, in the media, to destroy the myth of Kennedy. But it won't work. And my film is part of the reason it's not working.
Do you feel any responsibility towards actual facts, or does an artist have the freedom to recreate, to reconstruct historical events to get his point across?
Well, I answer yes to both questions. I feel that an artist has the right to interpret history the way he sees fit, and he cannot be censored. If an artist wants to paint Adolf Hitler as a good guy, he has the right to make a movie doing that. I am against censorship of any kind. I do feel, however, that an artist has a responsibility to his own conscience to at least do some homework and do some research and try to get as many facts as he can. In the case of the Kennedy killing, we did that. We had a tremendous amount of research. We read all the books. My staff read the books, everything we could get our hands on. We have a very, but there, at a certain point, there is only a certain body of facts that is known. The investigation was so sloppy, the original investigation by the Warren Commission was so sloppy that many of the facts never emerged. Many files were hidden, and there's a lot of disagreement on the facts. So my movie is not fiction. My movie is a representation of facts as we know them, and what I call hypothesis, what I think happened, because it is the unknown. We still don't have any evidence of a second gunman, except for the Zapruder film, which is, I think, very important evidence.
How do you feel after several months of JFK around the world causing controversy?
I'm very proud of the movie. It has really ignited a flame around the world. I mean, it worked in Latin America, it worked in Japan and Asia tremendous amount of people are seeing it. In Europe, it's huge. America, it was huge. It's worked everywhere. And it's ignited in people, those who care, those who go to this movie, a knowledge that their governments, all governments, whether they be in Mexico, America, or Europe, are not on the level with their people. That democracy is a bit of a mythology, an illusion, that we know, all of us know in our hearts, that the governments are really run by strong people, by the establishments of our various countries. And I think that's what's going on here. People want to see a change. They want to have more representative democracy. And I think that part of the reason the film has been successful is that it really hits that nerve, that the governments are lying to us.
Well, Platoon, born on the 4th of July, JFK. How long or how short is a nation's memory?
I'd say it's pretty short. It depends who gets to write the history, you see. If Hitler had won World War II, believe me, we'd all be studying German-influenced, Nazi-influenced history books, and we'd be believing it. When I was in France as a young man in the 50s, 1950s, I remember the French had no desire to admit to their collaboration with the Nazis. Young people my age would never admit to that. When I went to Russia in the 1980s to do a screenplay, I talked to young Russian people who knew nothing at all about Stalin's murders or crimes, and denied it. I think that in America you will find a certain group of the people that will never admit that John Kennedy was killed by the government. But it is our national disgrace that our official history of the 1960s was written by the government, the establishment, and by the media. And the media disgraced themselves in my country. The New York Times, the Washington Post, Time, Newsweek, CBS News, all of them. They disgraced themselves by not investigating this case as a homicide investigation, which is what it was. They accepted the official story on Sunday of the Kennedy was killed on Friday. By Friday afternoon, there was an entire portrait emerging of a killer, Lee Oswald, as a communist and as a lone nut and as an assassin. They bought it. They didn't investigate it. And when he was killed on Sunday so mysteriously by Jack Ruby, the headlines of the New York Times, for example, said, President's assassin killed in Dallas. Didn't even say assumed assassin, alleged assassin. In other words, the press bought into the story completely. And when the Warren Commission came out, they didn't ever investigate the Warren Commission because these were respectable men. These were honorable men. So what has gone on? History is being written by the winner, by those who cover up. And we all know it. And movies, thank God, and art should exist as an unofficial history, as the unofficial story, as a subversive influence. It's our role as artists to question the official story.
In an interview with Norman Mailer, he said that at one point, Time and Newsweek were the mouthpieces of the CIA. Do you believe it is still true?
I would say they were at that time. Absolutely. The CIA had many assets in journalism. They used them. Time magazine had a very cozy relationship with the CIA, and they were proud of it. Henry Luce was known for his jingoistic support of war in Cuba and war in Southeast Asia. And he had Time Life bought the Zapruder film and buried the film for 12 years. They would not show it to the American public. There's no question at that point in time that the CIA had a lot of influence in journalism. Today, it works a little bit differently. It works differently. Most of the American media is owned by large corporations that are fairly conservative. It's a bit like American television. You can say certain scandalous things, but you can't go too far. You won't get on TV. My JFK, the movie, would never have been able to be made for TV because nobody would have sponsored it. What I say in that movie could never have been put into newspapers responsible newspapers, mainstream newspapers. They could have been written as a book, but they would never have reviewed the book. They don't take it seriously. So in a sense, the media has closed ranks and become what I would say the establishment's mistress, not the whore, not completely the whore, but the mistress in the sense that she has the apartment, she has the fur coat, she has the car, and she can occasionally give the master grief. She can complain and make some scandals, but she can't go too far, or else she's out of the apartment and out of the fur coat.
Hollywood has been fantasizing with history since the silent era, but from you they demand the documentary truth. Why?
Well, I think the best documentary truth on JFK is the Zapruder film, which I used in the film repeatedly. The Zapruder film shows me clearly, shows the naked eye clearly that two things are improbable, if not impossible. One is that one bullet, a magic bullet, hits Mr. Kennedy and then hits Mr. Connolly in a very short time span and causes 7 wounds and breaks 2 bones. If you look at it on film, it's impossible. President Kennedy is leaning forward with his throat wound. Connolly is turning. It takes forever for the bullet to penetrate Connolly's list. Secondly, it shows the Zapruder film very clearly that the shot that supposedly kills Kennedy from the rear drives President Kennedy's head backwards. This is impossible. This is impossible. So that's documentary. But the government has come in and the press have come in and they have confused it. They give us a lot of different explanations, scientific explanations, for how this can be so. And they write all these facts on paper and they confuse everybody. I think the best smoking gun is the Zapruder film.
You made another film, Salvador. Do you think it contributed to make understanding to your country the Central American drama?
Oh, absolutely. It was not a tremendous box office success, but it did tremendous business on cable. And it was one of the first films to really question American foreign policy, the interventionist policy in South America and Central America. We pointed the finger, as you know, at the CIA for instigating the death squads, for helping them, supporting them, the story in Salvador and Guatemala, in Honduras, and in Nicaragua is disgraceful. It's absolutely disgraceful what we did there and our involvement. I mean, a lot of that stems from Vietnam. The death squads came into being in Salvador and out of the Vietnam experience. Some of those Salvadoran military leaders went to Vietnam to train, or they went to America. Our policy has backfired in our face, and the CIA I've compared is probably the biggest criminal organization in the world, way beyond the mafia, way beyond the mafia. Tremendous monies, tremendous assets, and huge big business stations.
So you think then El Salvador changed?
I think it helped
public opinion.
Absolutely, I think it helped to a certain degree to mobilize American public opinion against what I believe was an upcoming American intervention in Nicaragua. I cannot prove it, but I have no doubt in my mind, because I was down there, that Mr. Reagan at that time was ready to attack the Sandinistas. He was preparing for it. That's why he mobilized the reserves and he sent them to Honduras. I don't know if you remember that, but I was there at that point. I felt it coming. We were militarizing the entire area. It was just like Vietnam. And I think my movie helped put the brake on it. I think Oliver North, the scandal helped, Platoon helped. I mean, everything helped. But it was basically the only thing that stopped Mr. Reagan was a large body of active protests by private citizens, people who would join, small organizations that protested actively against the Nicaraguan invasion.
I spoke with a note to the American writer, and he said he hadn't seen your film and that he was not planning on it, not to have to mess over his mind with the way you distorted history. What do you think of that?
Well, I think he's obviously scared of something because, no movie can ultimately make your mind up for you. He sounds like a strong-minded man, and I'm sure that if anything, the movie would open up a new area maybe and introduce him to some facts he may not be aware of. The problem with the Kennedy murder is that all the revelations that destroy the foundation of the Warren Commission came out in bits and pieces over a period of time. There was not every order or organization to it. You found out a piece in 1967, 72, 75, 84. So no one knows the whole story. I tried in the movie to take everything and put it into one mosaic so that we could get everything at once, all the key evidence against the Warren Commission. I think that's a public service. And the facts I stand by, all those facts in the movie. Where I speculate, I openly speculate, and I say, what if, maybe, possibly, let's speculate. This gentleman is, I hope it's not your husband.
No, he's American.
Oh, what's his name?
No,
he's famous.
He's famous.
Oh, okay.
He's American.
But it's a shame that he has a closed mind because
husband saw the film.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it together. Well, tell me, does the constant attacks against the film and yourself has affected some way personally? Has affected you?
I think it's a disgrace what's gone on, because the script was stolen while I was shooting. It was distributed to all the media organizations in America. I was attacked before the film was finished, pre-censored by the Washington Post that said the film was a joke. Time Magazine, Chicago Tribune. There was a lot of attacks. When the film came out, we were attacked with the second wave. The cover of Newsweek said, "Don't trust this film." It was outrageous, the things that they were saying. And they were misrepresenting what I was saying, and they misrepresented what the film says. The film is much more subtle than they give it credit for. It puts out a possibility. It puts out a what if, a paradigm of all the possibilities that might have happened. It doesn't say that 5,000 people killed the president. It shows you a time and a place, and shows you the unpopularity of the president with the establishment. It talks about that, so that people are not actively plotting to kill Kennedy, but are saying basically, well, if he disappeared, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't investigate maybe his death so clearly. People like J. Edgar Hoover, people like Lyndon Johnson. And that pissed off a lot of people in this country, because these are the establishment. And it only proves that those people that are attacking my film in an irresponsible way, which is what they are really part of that establishment. And they are threatened by this film, because this movie says that there is a shadow government in America that really runs the show. The president's a clerk. If he doesn't do what they want, they get rid of him, whether it be a Watergate or kill him like they did with John Kennedy and Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King, because I think all three, who were a liberal activist tradition, were all killed by the same force.
My question was if it affected you.
Personally, yeah.
Yeah?
It's been the most exhausting movie I ever made. Not only was it tough to make, I had a 3-hour movie, I had 200 actors, 180-page script. It was a tough film to shoot in Dealey Plaza. We had to shoot in 3 cities, all the press attacks, and then to have to go and defend the movie after it came out, which I did, because I felt like the facts were being distorted, and I had to go on TV. And I debated, and I went everywhere I was attacked. I wrote a letter back. So it was the most exhausting. I've been working on it for 3 months after it was released. And I went all over the world. I went to Europe and Japan and your country and South America to sell it. Because this movie is more important than me. It's not about I'm in the service, I think, of a larger idea. And I'm proud of what I did. I'm proud of this movie.
What is your next one?
I can't tell you, Sylvia. I haven't announced that yet.
You're right. Oliver Stone, thank you very much for the interview. En Los Ángeles.